You have $1 million inside your 401k and you want to retire at 60 because you just can't take the sound of that alarm clock anymore. Before you hang it up, you probably have some questions. Do I have enough to retire? Am I invested correctly? And will my fear of running out of money become a reality? In this video, I'm going to run you through a case study of some clients I've actually worked with and some of the decisions that they made and how this might impact your retirement planning. I'm going to reduce this down to a probability of success so you have a clear understanding of how these different decisions can impact your ability to retire at 60 with $1 million inside your 401k. But before I do, I'm Brad Lineberger, certified financial planner, and I'm here to help you navigate retirement. If that interests you, subscribe. Now let me introduce you to Jim and Pam. Okay, Jim and Pam are both 60 years old, and we had to make some assumptions around their life expectancy. With advances in medicine, technology, and healthcare, people are living longer and longer. So I think it's important to not underestimate how long you're going to live. So for them, we chose the age of 90. We actually have some clients that will push the life expectancy out even further, and others, depending on family circumstances and genetics, we may adjust that. But Jim and Pam, we went with 90. And then their assumption on retirement, we went with 60. The next thing we had to do is really assess how much they want to live on in order to enjoy retirement in the next season of life. And Jim and Pam both said, hey, look, we're simple people. We're not extravagant spenders. We live within our means. And so they want to live on $5,000 a month. Their mortgage is paid off, but they're $5,000 a month, but they do love to travel. They absolutely love traveling. So we have a $10,000 a year travel budget. That might be plenty for you. Maybe that's not enough, but for Jim and Pam, that was right what they wanted. And then take a look at this. We've got their healthcare expense prior to Medicare at $25,000 a year, and that's real, folks. This is going to be probably your largest expense in retirement is healthcare, and number two is going to be taxes. So we've got that built into their budget there. And then once they get on Medicare, then we've got Medicare Part B, C, and D also factored into their plan. And then we're projecting taxes. So Jim and Pam live in Southern California. We've got federal taxes and we've got state taxes all flowing into the plan on top of the $5,000 a month they want to live on for normal expenses. So back to the healthcare piece. I think this is a common mistake that I see a lot of DIYers do when they're planning for retirement. Most people fail to factor in accurate expenses on healthcare, and that can really derail a retirement plan. So if this is describing you, make sure to get quotes on just what the cost is going to be for you and have it factored into your plan. And so here's the balance sheet for Jim and Pam. You can see that Jim's got the $1 million in his 401k. They also have a taxable brokerage account. They have a little bit in cash, and then they've got a home that's paid off. From an income standpoint, Jim's got Social Security of right around $3,000 a month, and his plan was to take it at 67, full retirement age. Pam spent most of the years at home taking care of the kids. She went back to work later on, and her Social Security benefit, she's going to end up getting the spousal benefit, which is half of Jim's Social Security benefit. So in this case, the first iteration of their plan, we're looking at taking Social Security at full retirement age. All right, so now we started to put it together for Jim and Pam, and we showed them what things are going to really look like. So they're 60 years old right now, and you can see on the income, Social Security is delayed all the way till 67, so there's really no income coming in those first few years. When we put together all those expenses, including the $5,000 a month, but everything else, it really came to about $95,000 a year. Take a look at this. There's those living expenses, and then here's those other expense flows. Those are the things like healthcare prior to retirement. So not only did it include the $5,000 a month they want to live on, but there's the $10,000 a year for travel, there's the healthcare for prior to Medicare, and then there's the Medicare expenses adjusted for inflation and kicking on later in life. And so that's where we're getting a really accurate projection that even though they want to live on $5,000 a month, they really need more like $95,000 a year. And when we adjust that for inflation every single year for the rest of their lives, take a look at this. when they're 90, they're gonna need almost $250,000 coming in to give them the same purchasing power that $5,000 a month gives them right now at age 60. Folks, that's only a 3-decade experience here, and it's gonna get really expensive. This is a really big mistake that I see most people who are doing this on their own that they make when it comes to retirement planning. So let's start to put it together for you so you can start to make good decisions for your plan. Here is their liquid investments right here. So the $1 million in the 401k, the brokerage account plus a little bit of cash. And the red, this column is showing how much money they're gonna have to take out of the portfolio every single year in order to make this happen. And so you can see that there's quite a bit of money that they're gonna be pulling out in the first phase of retirement. And then an interesting thing happens. These planned distributions, those are required minimum distributions that kick on when they are 75 years of age. And so you can see that those required minimum distributions start and then they grow because they get bigger with age. Look at this. Later on in life, they're having over $100,000 of required minimum distributions. This is something we're going to explore later, is whether a Roth conversion makes sense for them, because every single dollar coming out of that IRA is taxed at ordinary income, and their tax bill is going to be quite large over time. But the first question is, can they retire and can they do so with dignity? And so we use really conservative projections for growth rates in our portfolio. We want to use only 5.5% while people are retired. Most of our folks are doing much better than that, but we don't want to over project in the plan. And so as we start to look down the calendar here at just a 5.5% growth rate, there's a very good chance that Jim and Pam are going to end up having more money left at the end of life than they do today, or at least they're going to be really similar at the end. And that's with conservative growth rates. If they end up doing better, this is going to look a lot better. Now, before we celebrate, before we start to pop the champagne and high five and hug, we know something about markets, and that it's that markets never give us 5.5%. They're either up 25% or they're down 25%, but never a straight 5.5% like a CD or something. So the next thing we need to do is stress test this portfolio. And so here, this is their lifetime portfolio value, and you could see they're taking money out in the beginning, and that's because Social Security is not on. They've delayed Social Security to 67. But once Social Security kicks on, now all of a sudden, that lifetime portfolio value starts to increase, and it really peaks there in their mid-80s, and it's still looking pretty darn healthy at age 90. So let's stress test this, and we're running this against 1,000 randomly generated scenarios, market scenarios, some really good and some really bad. And take a look. In all 1,000 scenarios, they did not run out of money. So now we can start to celebrate. And the thing that I'll call your attention to is, notice that our confidence zone right there goes as low as 82%. And the first thing people say to me, they go, wait a minute, Brad, when I was in school, an 82 was a B. Are you telling me that if I had a B on my retirement planning here, you'd still tell me I can retire? And I'd say, yeah, I would, because take a look at this. We've run this through so many different scenarios. There was one here, and I sure hope they get this one, but this is them at age 90 with $2.27 million left in the investment portfolio at the end of life. And if that sounds a little absurd to you, it does to me, think about a bell curve here. I'll draw you a bell curve. You have the tip and the tail, and these are very low probability situations here, the tip and the tail, maybe only 2.5% probability. So very low odds that it's this good, 2.27 million, but equally low odds that it's this bad. And their really bad scenario is still having $1 million left. And their median case is having 1.5 million left. So they have 100% probability of not running out of money, but that just explains why the confidence zone goes as low as 82%. I'm not saying that if their score was as low as 82, that there's an 82% probability of not running out of money. I think a better way to look at it is, with a score of 82, there's an 18% probability that they're gonna have to make some sort of adjustments. Maybe they spend a little less, maybe they sell their home and downsize. I look at it more like that. But in this case, Jim and Pam are in fantastic shape. They can retire at 60 and have no problem. And so now our work becomes, how do we take their situation and go from good to great? And the first thing we wanted to look at was timing around Social Security. So you could see, we went to our software and we looked at what's the optimal strategy for when Jim and Pam should take Social Security. And if their goal was to put the most amount of money in their pocket from Social Security, the optimal timing strategy was Jim not at 67, but actually at 69 and 8 months. And then Pam would go ahead and take her spousal benefit at that time. That strategy, if they lived till age 90, was going to put $1,266,527 in their pocket. And of course, if they lived out to 100, that was going to put about $1.8 million in their pocket. And so this is really interesting to take a look at this. But this is where I think a lot of people go wrong and a lot of financial planners go wrong, is that this is only one part of the equation. This analysis was really made in a vacuum, as if this was the only factor going on. Because when we looked at this decision in the context of their overall financial plan, take a look at what we saw. So we saw, okay, what if they delay taking Social Security for years and years? It actually had a negative impact on their plan. In fact, they were going to lose about $365,000 because they were having to take such large distributions the first 10 years of retirement. And so we looked at it from another angle. We said, okay, so if delaying till 70 in the context of the overall plan doesn't make the most sense, what if we looked at them taking it earlier? And look at what we found. Taking it at 62 actually adds almost $550,000 of value to the bottom line. And this was interesting because you hear it here on our channel. We talk a lot about the benefits of delaying Social Security till 70. But the next thing that we always say is, this is not cookie cutter advice. Everybody gets a custom tailored financial plan. And for Jim and Pam, it's very clear. It was much better for them to take Social Security at 62. It was going to put a lot of extra money in their pocket. So for them, that's what we ended up doing with those guys. So the next decision point in helping Jim and Pam go from good to great was this. We wanted to look at their total tax bill. And what we saw is that the good news for them is that they're going to end up at age 90 with quite a bit of money left, about $1.3 million, which, by the way, when I see that, that tells me, hey, they could probably spend more along the way. They could travel more along the way. They could give more money away to their kids or to church or whoever they want to. They could do more with that money. But we looked at a total tax bill in their life of $218,000. So they're going to end up paying quite a bit in taxes over life. But look at this. Look at the little white space here. Those are the gap years. Those are the years between when they retire and when required minimum distributions kick on. And so what we explored with them was, what if we did some Roth conversions in those gap years? And the red, this is where you can see they're paying a little bit extra in taxes in those years. But what happens is the required minimum distributions almost go away completely, resulting in a lower lifetime tax bill to the tune of $41,203. So we were able to help them save over $41,000 in taxes, and it added over $665,000 to the investment portfolio because there's less money going out the back door to taxes, to pay our favorite uncle, Uncle Sam. And we have a saying around here that you want to pay your fair share in taxes, but you never want to leave the IRS a tip. Don't overpay in taxes, people. And so smart planning, knowing the rules, knowing how this works, having a good strategy makes a ton of sense. So after looking at this, Jim and Pam came to the same conclusion that I did. And they said, this looks good, but I like this idea of how do we go from good to great? They said, we think we can spend more. And I said, I agree. So what we did is I said, okay, what's your comfort level? Right now you're at 100% probability of success. you're spending about $5,000 a month. What's your comfort level with that probability of success? And they said, well, what if it was set to 90? And in that situation, how much money could we spend if we're comfortable with a 90% probability of success? And I thought that was interesting. We found that if they're comfortable with a 90% probability of success, they could spend an extra $10,000 per year. And when we looked at the impact on their probability of success, we got them to about 89% probability, and they could spend an extra $10,000 a year. So essentially they doubled their travel budget. And they really started to do all the trips that they'd only dreamt of: Ireland, Scotland, New Zealand, Australia, South America. They had such a great time. And it was pretty typical of most retirees we work with that when you're in your 60s, those are your healthy years. We call those the go-go years, where people go hard and they do all the things that they've been wanting to do. And then people start to slow down somewhere in their 70s. So in retirement, we have the go-go years, the slow-go years, and then the no-go years. And typically that's in the 80s and beyond. And so Jim and Pam were well aware of this. We've had a lot of conversations about it. And they said, look, we want to really front load our experiences in those go-go years. And that's what they did. We were able to double the travel budget. And my favorite thing is when they send me pictures from some of these great destinations that they go to. And I tell them, I'm living vicariously through you. I've got 4 kids. I'm certainly not running off to Australia and New Zealand. So I'm living through Jim and Pam, and it's so fun. But it brings a lot of joy to me just watching how much fun they're having. So in any case, I hope this was helpful. If you're out there and you've got $1 million in your 401k and you're 60 years old and you're wondering, can I do this? My answer is, I think you can, but we need some careful planning. We need to have that plan in place. We need to look at the taxes. We need to look at retirement income sources. We need to look at distribution strategies. We need to really put this thing together for you. So if you want help doing this, or you just have some questions about financial planning in general, feel free, look us up, seasidewealth.com. You can get on the calendar and schedule some time with one of our advisors, and we're happy to help you navigate this big transition. And we wish you well. And as you're preparing to retire, if you want to know what to do with your 401k when you retire, check out this video here. It's chock full of good ideas, strategies, and helpful hints. And we'll see you on the next one.